Thank you for joining us for our final discussion on Tress of the Emerald Sea. We already recorded 4 episodes of this where we took the book point by point, or rather part by part, and discussed it. And now we're digging into the wider Cosmere spoilers, talking about some of the things that we've caught, the things that we want to dig into a little bit more, but we also know that we can't catch everything, so we're excited to see what y'all caught that we missed. But starting with the most obvious thing, the narrator, Hoid.
Yes.
And who is he talking to?
I mean, I think we should first state this is going to be huge Era 1 spoilers that we're about to unleash. So if people have not read Era 1 of Mistborn, just one. I know this is a Cosmere spoiler, but just in case.
Second warning.
Who is he talking to? Does anyone have any ideas? I have some, but...
I personally think it's from the people of, what is that planet?
First of the Sun?
First of the Sun. Yep. That's what I got going through the whole thing, was like, this sounds like someone, they've got boats. He mentioned AVR. Like, this sounds like a First of the Sun type.
Yeah, and that's from Six of the Dust novella.
Yes.
In case, but that's what I thought as well. So that was my initial thought.
Yeah, you mentioned before we started all this that he also talks about, like, in your world, they have TVs or radios or something like that, right? So stuff like that almost made me think, is he talking to me? Like, you know what I mean?
That was my thought too.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a few very earthen things that he says that I'm like, okay, is this because he's a storyteller and he's just translating things? But then it almost felt like he was speaking to us. So it seems like I do kind of wonder if there's sort of a sneaky thing that he's going to do in the future to recontextualize, and it's not actually something that we know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the other thing on that point was the interesting choice that Hoid uses the name Sazed instead of Harmony, especially when we talk later about where we think this takes place in the Cosmere. Sazed would have already been Harmony. So I was very interested in that choice. And that also goes with what you're saying, like, is this just some other place we don't know who would be connected to Sazed as a person? I don't know. It's very confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because I definitely had thoughts, like, I wondered, I was like, is Hoid on Earth? And what does that mean?
Right, exactly.
You know,
like, I'm cool with world hopping.
Yeah, I'm like,
but now you're taking it too far.
Are we in the Cosmere? Did you not know?
Right, exactly.
But yeah, like, and it's a good point with the Sazed though as well. Like, my initial reaction with that, I was like, I didn't read too much into it, I don't think, because like, I don't know. I didn't read into it in the sense of like, I didn't like think it was weird that he didn't call him Harmony because he knows Sazed, I guess. So I was like,
That's true.
So I kind of glossed over that one. That one didn't like, I don't know, like get my attention as much as some of the other phrases he'll put in there. But it does kind of bring up the question of like timelines as well. And like at what point in the Cosmere timeline are we?
Exactly.
But something else you just said, though, so he could also just be talking to people on Scadrial, because we were talking about how Era 2 is like, we're starting to see them get into like the TV.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're
So-
starting to have more technology and like more like Earth-ish technology,
Which
electronics,
poses
I guess.
the question then, okay, if he is talking within the Era 2 realm, then why is he saying Sazed? Because he is distinctly Harmony.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that like kind of doesn't.
So does he overcome his current conflict?
Is he talking to Kelsier?
That'll be the answer to everything.
There's one thing that tips me off that it may not be Scadrial. In the end, when the AI voice comes in on the ship, on the rocket, he says it's like those sentient ships that land on your planet.
Right.
And so I believe that Scadrial is one of the furthest along in the Cosmere, which is why I don't think that there's any ships landing on Scadrial that they would have a reference point to.
Sure.
But we do know in First of the Sun that they do have the ones above that are landing on their planet.
Oh.
Yeah, which is
so-
why I was tipped off thinking it at first. But we don't know when Hoid's telling this story. So
Exactly.
he could be telling the story to someone on Scadrial after that's already happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of indicators that it is future set, like further along than what we've seen, which is the implication that I got as far as timeline goes, that it's
I think the other
More
question
future?
you have to ask is like, how much of the story does his audience know? Like, when you look at like a whole universe of worlds, like maybe information has not gotten here about this change, and so just to simplify the story, we're going to use these names. Who knows?
yeah.
And I need to go back and look at that specific line more when he uses the term Sazed. Was that an aside to himself, or was it a part of his storytelling? Because that also recontextualizes.
I feel like it was a part of his narration.
It was because you're saying like Sazed
Yeah.
set them free. which is something we can talk
Exactly.
about
Yeah,
later.
they've been getting more themselves since Sazed
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
It's part of the
yeah.
story.
They've
Acting
It's like-
more unruly since Sazed set
Yeah.
them free, which to me reads as Era 2 beyond what we've read so far.
Yeah.
So, which gives me all these kinds of questions about, okay, what's Harmony? Like, where's he going, you know?
We already at the end of Era 2 are questioning that, which
Yeah.
is interesting. It's like the punch of the lost metal to Tress of the Emerald Sea is like definitely our 1-2.
Yeah.
Right. I completely agree. They complement each other really well.
I think that it's for sure past Era 3.
Yes, I agree.
Because Sazed has already let them go. If it's before Era 3, then there's something that we have to catch up to when we finally get to Era 3.
Which he said they're
could
going to be
even-
close together, right?
They're
In
going to be
timeline?
like 75 years-ish.
Okay.
And it is
And then-
interesting because he does say they've been free for decades, which implies that it is probably less than 100 years, because why wouldn't you say centuries?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's got to be, so that also points to me that maybe it is not, because originally I was like, oh, this is like end of Era 3, start of Era 4. But when someone pointed out the decades thing, I'm like, oh, maybe it is closer to the start of Era 3. I don't know.
And that's something that Sanderson does really well is he sets something up in one series and then continues it in another. And I feel like we could potentially in Era 3 get that answer and then be like, okay, that's what he was talking about, which is
Yeah.
he's playing with timelines in a really fun way.
I think another clue that we could get is from Fort's
Tablet.
tablet.
Yeah.
It is from
Malthus?
Malthus, which is where Warbreaker takes place. We see Nalthian tech in the Lost Metal, and it's not that sophisticated. I mean, it is sophisticated because it has Awakening, but it is not as sophisticated to be a tablet that he can type on and has different fonts and voice recognition. So I think that it is
Well,
that
and
that
it's
can
future
indicate,
prediction, like it has telepathic abilities as well. That it can foresee what he wants to say, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So speeding through, since you brought up the tablet, speeding through a couple of other little ones. Irali, is that how you say it? Irali?
Iriali.
Iriali.
Yeah.
Lots of
It's-
syllables
yeah.
now.
Yep.
Ooh, yeah. Well, we kind of called Sanderson out, right, about his fantasy
a Doug.
names.
The Doug Cup.
The Doug. It's the Doug tablet.
Yeah.
And so we have that where Charlie was talking about them at the beginning with the cup.
That
Iron
was a-
Eyes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just say that was an interesting mention to me only because the Aurelie aren't native to Roshar. They are known to be like important in the space age of the Cosmere. So I just felt like everything was just pointing towards space. We're in space now.
It does.
Here you go.
Especially
Welcome.
because what he said, which this could have been a false thing because Charlie sometimes makes up his stories. But one thing that he said is Sanderson here. Hey, Brendan. What do you think?
What do I think? Well, it's a very nice looking book that you.
It's a great looking book, isn't it?
It's by this indie author. You probably haven't heard of him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, his name's Hoid.
His name's Hoid.
Thanks, Wade. So, how's the discussion going?
Very
It's going
well.
great.
Yeah.
You've given us a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. I hope that there's a lot to talk about. Do you have any questions for me while I'm here? I have like a minute before I have to run to my class.
I had one.
Okay.
Do we see Allomancy in this book?
Do we see Allomancy in this book? I don't believe that you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to think about it.
Do we see Allomancy but not Allomancy?
Potentially. Whoa. You guys got to remember, I live this is what I was working on 3 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
I'm on Stormlight World right now, writing flashback
Okay.
scenes.
Follow-up question.
But I don't believe, I'm counting through them, I don't believe you see any allomancy in this book. You are talking about emotional allomancy?
Yes.
Yeah, I am known.
The fact that it's that much of a
hard.
question.
Now it's a mystery.
Yeah.
We gotta go reread it.
Yeah, the only question mark. So Hoid is not using emotional allomancy on anybody. How about that?
Okay. That answers my question.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the question.
I have a practical question.
Yes.
Okay, we have these moons.
Yes.
They're so very large.
Yes.
You have the seas that look and function so differently.
Yes.
Is it like an atmospheric bubble that they're in? How does it work when you cross from one sea into the other? Are the spores are touching? There's like different coloring to it. How
do
does
they
that
not mix?
Yeah, how does that section off so distinctly?
So it's kind of interesting. Looking at, so I kind of got some of this, the way that I look at these oceans, these seas, from real world oceans where you can see where two like waveforms meet.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was
Yep.
You nailed
You
it.
get saltwater and non-saltwater
Yes.
meeting, and there's actually kind of a weirdly regular line between them that gets maintained. And obviously, then they mix because they're both just water and things like that. But that line was really fascinating to me. What's going on in my mind, and I haven't run this past the Arcanist, so we could, But the idea is that the spores, enough is falling from these spores that as they're kind of mixing, they're also kind of going down underneath, and you've got the decomposition of the spores, which is part of what's causing the seed and all of these sorts of things. And so they're mostly like, they do kind of mix.
Okay.
The line, it would look pretty regular from someone standing on a ship but looking at, but if you got close, you'd see more spore mixing
Okay.
and even blending pretty far in. But then those spores are kind of getting pushed underneath by the new spores that are coming and the new layers, and then those spores are dying off at the bottom of the ocean and things like that. That's how I'm doing it in my head.
Yeah.
At least how I'm justifying getting that kind of, like I said, creepy line that you get even in the real world between different bodies of water meeting. So,
All right, thank you.
That's
That makes
me.
sense.
That's but again, I haven't run that past the Arcanist. That's how it's working in the back of my head.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, keep on going. I'm gonna run off to my class.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about space. Like everything leads to space, but with the they
Yes.
they vanished 100 years ago. Just one day with no. It was like a poof. They were just gone, which to me is like, what? Were they abducted? That's very alien to me. You know what I mean? Or do we have an answer to that?
Was this the thing that's in Charlie's story?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
So
they just,
did he
like,
make it up?
But see, I'm just not sure Charlie's a reliable storyteller. I
Yes.
didn't think anything of that.
Well, so I would assume that at least his timelines are correct to a point that they were around sometime in the near past. And we know that the Iriali have been around on Roshar for lots longer than that. So it's possible that they go from Roshar to Lumar.
I think it's Lumar.
Lumar.
Something that sounds very
Lumar.
spacey.
And then somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yeah.
know that they've had space travel. I think they're one of the most important space travel people, so I guess
See-
it wouldn't be surprising.
Right.
don't know
And I
about
was
that.
curious about the reliability of his story too, but just the fact that he knows their language and he knows about
true.
them, you know what I mean? Like he learned it all in
Yeah.
gardening school. I understand that. But I feel like that implies that he maybe knows what he's talking about a little bit.
At least enough to recognize the language and the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Iron Eyes also got a little mention here, or rather, death.
Death with
Yeah.
nails
With
in his eyes.
Death with nails in his
I don't care if he shows up. Yeah,
That threw me.
Right.
That threw me.
Yes.
I was
So-
like, is he now
Is
just
he
the death
here?
of all Cosmere?
Is he the Grim Reaper of?
Yeah. Is he
I
just
think-
the Grim Reaper?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think at the end of Lost Metal, they talk about spreading his.
Yes.
Like in the Arcanum portion, like Chris maybe talks about spreading his name far and wide.
Yes. So it could be a lore situation.
It might be a lore situation,
right.
or it might be that he's world hopping. I personally hope he's world hopping and scaring everybody.
I hope so too, just because I want more from Marsh.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah. So and the Lost Metal was a bumsky as far as his little show. Like it made me sad. So I want more from him. I want to
I
see
loved him in the Lost
No,
Metal.
I loved him too. It's just like he
want
just
more.
can't catch a
Oh,
break.
okay.
Yeah, and you want more and all that. So yes, I would love to see more from him. But yes, lore was also something that I had considered for him because like the Grim Reaper, like that's just something that it's just a reference.
Yeah, that was a reference I found
Yeah.
particularly interesting because I felt like that is one if you have not read any other book, you would not question the idea
yeah,
of Death
exactly.
having nails in
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
And so that was like a very cool reference for me because I was like, oh, that completely works if you have zero knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
well,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think it's very telling that it's in a chapter called The Survivor. That's so I don't know what the connection is. I couldn't find one in that chapter.
Right.
But the chapter name was The Survivor.
So maybe he is talking to Kelsey.
There's maybe.
Well, let's
and then
look up
there's
what I was about
references
to say,
to Mars. So
Really?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, to interrupt.
I'm sorry, no, what did you say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was like, maybe Hoid just put that in. Maybe he just put that in to say to whoever he's talking to.
Yeah.
And it's like not related to Tress's world at all. It's just him saying it because he's talking to someone who's from Skadriel or he's talking to Kelsey. We're just gonna double down.
I mean,
Giving the
the
point
interesting thing about that is we've talked a lot in the last episodes about the reliability of Hoid as a narrator and how much of this is him telling a story versus we're supposed to assume he got to be omniscient for a little bit. So like how much of the story is true or how much is narration? Like that's a good point.
I just think he asked for people's, like, that's what a storyteller does, is they ask people for their stories so that they can tell them. So as far as him not participating in every part of the story, I just feel like he just asked, okay, so tell
Okay,
me.
but what if Tress said something different about death and he recontextualized it so his
Yes.
audience would
so
understand?
it's
Yes.
what
an
I'm saying.
understanding.
Well, yeah,
thing.
that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like at another point in the Cosmere, I don't remember where, he says that the best stories are always embellished.
Yeah.
So I feel like that
I think that
could
was
pretend
a
that
strong
Not
light
trust
thing.
Yeah.
Hoid.
yes.
Trust Hoid with your life.
No.
Got it.
I mean, I definitely would, but
We're Team Hoid.
As long as you acknowledge that he'll throw your life away if he finds something he thinks is more important. Then
Look,
yeah.
that just means that I need to be important to him.
Maintain relevance.
Exactly.
I'll be his assistant. I'll be his scribe. I'll just take notes for everything that he does, and then I'll never.
Just wait until voice to text comes into play.
Stop.
You're done. You're done.
Well, I mean, it already has. So.
It already has.
You know,
In this
speaking
world,
of
though?
Hoid, a question I saw brought up a lot, and now I'm spacing. Oh, design. Where was design? Hoid doesn't ever talk about design, and we think that this is taking place after Stormlight, or at least the front half.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, what do we think about that? Did he somehow lose design, or is he just not a part of this story? Or
I thought about that. I think it was on the drive down here. Where was design? Because we know that he has them after Stormlight's archive, but we don't see them in the Lost Metal. I think Brandon said that she was around, but I don't know.
in the Lost
In the
Metal or in
Lost
Tress?
Metal.
Oh, in the Lost Metal.
No, I haven't heard
In the
anything about
Lost
Tress.
Metal, Hoid wasn't present enough for me to question it.
Right.
You didn't, but in this case, he was fighting in a way that made me think design would be present if she was there. So anyway,
Okay, more random. Blink and you'll miss it. Which you actually did experience. That is with Ulan, the Kandra.
oh yeah,
Yes. So you said that you actually didn't.
It took me a while
Yeah.
to realize he was a Kandra. And I think that was because of how he was physically described, even though,
Sure.
like, in a way, I'm like, the way he's physically described should have told you. Like, he's a Kandra. This might be because I read the first draft
Sure.
of the book, and when I did my reread of this, it was much clearer. Like, I think if I had
sure.
Okay.
read this version first, I would not have been like,
Yeah.
who, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I was coming
So-
off hot from the Lost Metal, And after hanging out with Milan, it's
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
you want an
okay.
eyeball? Makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
also his name is very obvious as well, like Ulan.
Ulan,
Like, I'm like,
yeah, very similar.
I look back at myself not realizing that and like, why?
Yeah, he
How?
barely comes off as eccentric after hanging out with Milan.
And we do. It's interesting. We see him in the Lost Metal. He's the Kandra they deal with, right?
Yeah, right. Who's always asking for
Yeah.
body parts?
Yeah, and I love. The,
I never made that
It's the
connection.
same person.
It's the same name.
Oh, is it the same name?
Uh-huh.
Oh, see, this is I told you I
Yeah.
don't read
Ulan
names.
was in the Lost Metal.
Yeah.
I never caught it.
Yeah, he's always asking them for their body parts and
Yeah.
trying to buy them.
Yeah, now that you say it, I feel like an idiot.
I thought he was in a
But
different name.
it's just the
though.
thing with him, apparently.
I'm
We
pretty
can't
sure
recognize
It's the same
him.
name. You're probably right.
wow.
They
okay.
can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
So with us talking about Kandra, us talking about Ulan and everything, Sazed freed them, which we've already mentioned, but that has a lot of connotations that like makes your brain spin a little bit. So theorizing, do we want to dig into that a little bit?
I think that might be something that we see at the end of Era 3. The end of Era 3 happens and he frees the Kandra. I've had the theory for a while that Sazed is not making it past Era 3. He's either going to give up one of the shards and become only preservation or ruin, or they're going to he's going to give them up completely to a new
Yeah, the vessel.
person. Yeah, vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with that. I'm more interested in, the Kandra are very connected to Harmony, and that's the whole conceit of Era
Right.
2 is like this whole control spike thing.
Yes.
So my question is like, how much control did he give up? Like, how free are they? Are they really like not influenced at all by Harmony anymore, or whoever the shard bearer is? Did they change something with the spikes in the contract? Like, I'm curious. Like, I might be overthinking it. Maybe it is just like, no, you guys can go wherever you want.
Right.
But I mean, we already saw Milan world hop.
Yeah, she's world hopping now.
She's world hopping now. So,
Right.
but the idea they were set free seems very different than world hopping just in itself.
Right.
So I'm
Yes.
curious.
I assumed a contract change, that they still have some sort of connection, because this has been their whole world. It's just that now they're more free and they have their own agency a little bit more. I did think that Ulan, before I got to know him very well, I definitely thought he was Milan at the beginning. I was like, there she is. She's here. Yeah, because we've seen her take on a male persona. So I was like, okay, got it.
Well, but it's also, doesn't Hoid mention something about them becoming their own people or something? Like he's starting to become his own person?
Yeah, the less they have to imitate
Yes.
humans, the more they become themselves.
Okay.
He said something about they're getting more unruly, which, yeah.
So that's why I was like, are they less connected? That's just my question, I guess. Like, I don't know. Are they less connected to their vessel now? I guess.
That's what I had thought, is that Sazed just cut it completely.
free.
Right.
Just
Yeah, just
dissolve the
completely cut
contract
it.
Okay.
completely. They are
So they
their
don't
own
need spikes
entity.
anymore to function?
I think that hemalurgy still is required.
Right, okay.
But he may have
It's not the
fixed
connection.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ulan definitely seemed like his own entity. Like, he seemed very just do what he wants. Even Hoid said that Tress solved the problem after Ulan has had years of trying to solve it, and Tress got it in no time, and it was because,
Elon didn't care.
hey, you do what he wanted.
He's like, I'm just gonna do what I want.
Two immortals, how long? But
Yeah.
5 years isn't really
Yes,
anything.
good point. Like, I'll string him along for a little while, and that's a long while. And then we have the other kind of big reveal, which Hoid talking about, was it that his goal was to take down a god that he has, or that he still has that ambition? Do you know what I mean?
When I got to it, I thought that it was that he was referencing destroying Adonalsium, shattering Adonalsium.
Right.
That's the way that I interpreted it. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like something that happened in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right. I briefly had the same question, Merphy, because it was like this weird, the tenses in the book are kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So when I first read it, I was like, wait, which shard does he want to kill right now?
Right.
Like, because it was God singular. So I was like,
Exactly.
oh, there's a
Yeah.
specific shard. And then because then he was like talking about, I said for their own good. I was like, oh no, he's just talking about his past. So I agree. I think this was
Yeah.
the big, like when they went and told
Yeah.
16 people, like, we should do this, it's for our goods. And now he's realizing
That it
So-
wasn't.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
it
what I thought
wasn't.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think the line about I've said this 16 times was in tandem with that of I killed a god once, and I said 16 times, this was for your own good.
Yeah, he says to the 16 people, and that's specifically
shards.
I believe
Number
it.
of shards.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah,
assumed.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
like
for
16.
some reason, I read it as like current timeline goal, and so I was like, I had
you
that.
trying to kill?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Who are you trying to kill? Or is there some future where the shards come back together and now he's trying to separate them again? Do you know what I mean? Was kind of where my brain leapt to.
I mean, in all fairness, I feel like Hoid would kill pretty much any of the gods if he.
You are so.
But that's why it needs to be plural. But that's why it would need it to be plural. I'm out
Yeah.
to kill gods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it was
but it
God
was singular. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
I mean,
he didn't say a god, right? It was.
I think he did say
Did
that.
he say
I
a?
think it
He
was
did say
singular.
it was
God.
singular. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why it was more confusing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
I
like
think.
yeah,
Yes.
but
So, future Hoid book, Dragonsteel. Do we know that it's going to be Hoid's story? Do we think that we're going to see him do that? Like, is that what
Hoid?
that is?
it might be
Oh.
about the shatter.
It might
The
be
shattering,
shattering.
I thought that it was about him and the shattering.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Getting to
That's
know
what
the
I'm
16.
assuming.
So that was
Yeah.
kind of foreshadowing for that,
that
book
story.
to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah.
I want to read that
I
book.
think we're all very excited
Then
for
you'll
it, and it's a long
realize that
time
you
away.
should not trust Hoid.
I trust him with my life. Zeisis? There is a giant snake in this book, so I guess we could just pretend
Yes.
that the dragon is one too.
Yeah.
Yes, so he's referenced in other books. I know that was something that you have, like, you know where he was referenced, right?
Was he referenced in other
Zeiss
books?
is?
I don't think Zeiss is referenced in other books. I saw
I
with
know
dragons. in
Dragons.
general.
Dragons are.
But there's
Frost.
speculation that he was one of them that was referenced, because there's references about a dragon that lives under the sea in another book, I think. Am I remembering that wrong?
Is there?
Maybe.
Okay, that's fine.
We can't. I don't
You
know.
s-
You could be
That
totally
sounds
right.
familiar.
Yeah, that could be totally
The comments will let
right.
us know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us. Tell us.
And we know that there's Frost, who is another dragon.
We know Frost and we know Cultivation has a dragon form.
Right.
We have
Yeah.
just never gotten to see Cultivation in her dragon form.
I think we've seen more dragons than we realize since they are naturally shapeshifters. I think that there's going to be a point. You know how Sanderson's like, I'm taking the gloves off for the Cosmere. There's going to be a point where he's like, taking the gloves off for the dragons. You know what I mean?
It's like a secret invasion. Dalinar is secretly a dragon.
Everyone's a dragon.
Everyone's a dragon.
Everyone's a dragon.
I hope. That'd be great. I want some dragon fights. I want some sky dragon fights. And then I think the last big one was just the sorceress, obviously, with the and Elantrian, with the light weaving that we saw as well. All that happened there at the end. There's a lot.
She's related to someone, right?
She is the Elantrian from Secret History.
Oh, she is
Oh,
the
she
Elantris from
is.
Secret
Oh,
History.
okay.
Yep.
How?
Oh,
What's
yeah,
the
I knew that. She's a
confirmation?
part of the
Her
IRE.
name.
No. What's the secret
E-
society?
Eerie.
Eerie. Yeah, the. No.
They're at Silverlight. The IRE.
The IRE.
IRE.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
IRE. I was like, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah,
Whatever.
IRE. I believe the name that he calls her at the very end is the name of the main
okay.
person.
But isn't she also related to someone in Elantris, like the main character? Isn't she like a cousin or something? Am I like making that up?
No,
don't
I
know
remember
that.
hearing that as well.
Yeah, I
I
can't
don't know if that
remember.
was speculation or if that was actually confirmed. Though.
Okay, that might just be speculation. But yeah, she's for sure in Secret History. That's that's
She
the big one.
does. Hoid does reference her being a husk at one point. That she's come a long way since she was a husk. So I wonder if she was there during the fall of Elantris. too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is then, why is she here and why is she trying to instate this war and, have all this power and stuff? Do we have any guesses or speculation?
I think that she's maybe trying to get one of the Aethers or get control over an Aether. Because we see her in Secret History trying to get control over preservation. I don't think that she's changed very much. She wants to ascend. And I think that she sees these Aethers as shard adjacent. And if she can become akin to the Aethers, that's like her goal.
That's an interesting theory.
And the interesting question about that is why is she doing it on the volatile planet and not on the origin planet
Right.
of Aether, which we know exists because we got to see some of that in Lost Metal. So that's another interesting question with that theory is why choose this location?
Maybe because it's safer.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I would guess,
That there's not someone
resistance.
that's
looking for
controlling
her
it.
or
Yeah.
controlling it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sanderson has said that he's continuing on with Elantris. It's not truly a standalone.
Yeah.
So I guess my guess would be that means that we're going to have a huge time jump between book 1 and book 2, and we're going to see this tremendous amount of progress that has been heavily implied in this book, or flat out shown to us
Yeah.
in this book in the technology.
I think book 2 is going to follow K-Ice,
Okay.
who is one of K9.
I don't know why you're asking me for a pronunciation guide. I said at the very beginning I can't do that.
Uncle K, one of his daughters, one of the twins.
Yeah. Okay. I hadn't heard that. Were there any other Cosmere
I
connections
forgot
we wanted to
about
discuss?
Midnight Essence, Midnight, Midnight Spores, Midnight Essence, Stormlight. That is a huge
Yes.
one that
Yes, they act the same too.
they act the same. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's much to discuss there other than
Other than like it's there, and there's a connection.
Yeah.
It's
I think what
exciting.
Sanderson did a lot in this book was just kind of name drop a lot of stuff and give opportunities for himself to further explore later on.
And maybe a foundation to be like, I've been telling you these are all connected, and now I'm showing you in small ways these are all
How it
connected.
works,
Like
right.
you can see how they.
And I really hope that this is how he continues to do. I know that he's going to further bring it together, but this is so accessible, and this is so, it's fun for the fans to be able to theorize and try to piece it together before he shows us. But then I also think that makes it feel so much more organic. I know there's been a lot of speculation and discussion about, okay, if he connects this so deeply, then will anyone be able to enter Stormlight, or be able to enter the Cosmere, and how tangled will it be to where you have to read everything or you can't read anything? And if it looks more like what he's shown us up to this point, then I think that this is going to work out in a really fun way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's proven with Lost Metal and with Tress that you can have Cosmere connections without ruining the overall story. And there are people who've only read Mistborn, and Lost Metal was fine. Like it didn't matter that they didn't catch everything. And I think it's the same with Tress. I just don't think it matters. I think we all know somebody who just read Tress, was like, yeah, it was great. I loved it. And they didn't, it just doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, I think it was really seamless in this. Like there were so many throwaway comments that connects things without it being any sort of hurdle for a newcomer.
Yeah.
Which is why Tress is such a great entry point, because it's so accessible, it's so well paced, it's fun, and all the Cosmere connections that make us geek out is no big deal.
Yeah, they don't like distract.
Yeah.
From
And
the
like
story.
as the person who at the table who is like not as well versed in the whole Cosmere, it's nice as a reader to read a book and know that there is stuff that you don't understand yet, but if you read more, you will learn more.
Yeah.
And then you can go back to this book and it will mean so much more once you've done that.
Yeah.
As a reader, I really like writers who have an idea of what's going on with the mountains beyond the mountains that we see. And knowing that all of these things do actually work together just makes a story like this seem so much stronger.
Okay, is there anything else that we wanted to bring up before we wrap up this discussion?
There is something people are obsessing over a little bit, and that is that fate at one point is capitalized, and maybe a shard name that we have not gotten yet, which would be fate. Now, when I read it, I thought a lot of people refer to fate as an entity, like luck be a lady, fate. It's kind of like that. So I'm not convinced, but then at the same time, Brandon always does stuff like this, so then maybe it is. So yes, the capitalized F.
Yeah. Well, there's that, and fate is a pretty big factor in this story. Luck is a really big factor in this story.
Yep.
And even talking about how the Crimson Sea is dependent on luck, but doesn't really seem like it. That does kind of coincide with that theory.
And maybe even some of the frustrations that we had with how things always seem to be working out. Maybe that's just a little bit of foreshadowing.
Maybe fate is
Interesting.
very active in this story.
Yeah.
Sadly, this is the final episode for Brandon's book club, specifically for Tress of the Emerald Sea. But thank you so much for joining us. I had a ton of fun getting to actually dig into these books and discuss them more. I hope y'all had fun too. We would love if you just flooded the comments with theories, stuff we missed, your own speculation. We're all going to be in the comments for these videos and participating in that and theorizing with you. So we would love to hear y'all's theories as well. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and bye.